So the first step in building our leg sets is going to be building what I'm calling the fixed tray. This is the panel which will have the legs bolted to it. And the material we're going to use is plywood. And I've sawn this on my table saw to a width of 17.5 inches and a length of 23 3/4 of an inch. And of course, it's perfectly square. And the material itself is 3/4 of an inch thick. Don't go thinner than that. You can go thicker if you want to, but don't go thinner. And the hardware you've been supplied is assuming you're using a 3/4 inch thick material in this location. But the plywood here is the least expensive plywood I could find at my home store. It was about $25 for a 4x8 sheet, much more material than I need, and it's going to be fine. However, what we'll be working with today is a much more refined plywood. It has many more plies for its thickness. It's much flatter and much smoother, and it also will work just fine. But you could go to the next level and use a 3/4 inch thick panel, which is faced with a gorgeous surface veneer. But the choice is up to you. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be plywood. It could be, for instance, corian, and it could be a material I know of called Smart Side, which is a man-made sheet good which we use to build outdoor garden sheds. Any of these will work because, unlike solid wood, all of these materials are equally strong in all directions, whereas solid wood tends to be very strong across the grain, but relatively weak and easily split along the grain. Additionally, these sheet goods are dimensionally stable. Solid wood tends to expand and contract given changes in humidity, whereas these sheet goods are going to stay dimensionally stable throughout the life of your bench, and that's a good thing. So we're using plywood. In addition to that, we're going to need our 4 legs. We're going to need a little bit of the hardware, and then we're going to need some hand tools. We're going to need a power drill equipped with a 13/32 inch twist drill. We're going to need a 9/16 inch wrench, and I'm going to speed things up with my power driver equipped with a 9/16 inch socket. And we're going to need a couple of clamps. I'm going to use spring clamps. Any clamps will do. And hopefully you've got a drill press. If you have a drill press, you'll want to use that. If you don't, you can get by without it, in which case you'll need a piece of scrap wood. And I'll show you how you'll do that in a minute. But let's drill some holes. So I've got my 17.5 by 23 3/4 inch panel down on my bench, and I have one of its edges extended beyond the bench top by 2 or 3 inches. I also have 2 of my legs. Now I've mentioned you get 4 legs with the hardware package, but I should also mention that 2 of those legs are left legs and 2 of those legs are right legs. And we want to make sure that there's a left and a right at each end of the bench. So you need to pair those up. And the top end of those legs is the end that has the 3/4 inch hole near it. Those are the holes that are going to receive the rod assembly, and we need to keep them at the same end of our panel. But we want to line up the leg like this with the long edge of our panel, and we want to line up the top end of the leg with the top edge of our panel perfectly. And once you've got that in that perfect position, we want to clamp it in place. And now I'm ready to use my hand drill with the 13/32 inch bit to start my holes. And I'm only going to start the holes and effectively mark them using the hand drill because I have a drill press, And I want to use that to finish the holes because I know the drill press is going to drill squarely to the surface of the sheet. And I can avoid drilling at an angle other than 90 degrees. And I also know that the table of the drill press is going to support the exit cut. And I can avoid nasty breakout on the downside. Now, if you don't have a drill press, you can clamp a piece of scrap material that will then support the exit cut and prevent breakout. And as far as drilling squarely, you're going to have to be careful. And maybe you can enlist the eyes of a friend to watch you from this direction while you check for squareness from your viewpoint. And between those two things, I think you can probably make this work without a drill press. But I have a drill press, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm ready to mark my holes. Now, I'm going to drill the top two holes for sure, and I'm going to drill the bottom one for sure. These two are there for the mounting of a caster package. If you're not going to incorporate a caster package into your bench design, then you don't have to drill these holes. But everybody gets the caster package, and I'm no exception, so I will be drilling those holes, and I'm ready to mark my holes. Here we go. Okay, so I have very definite markings there, so I can remove that. What I would do now is flip this around, do the same thing to the second leg. Remember, keep these 3/4 inch holes at the same end. I'm going to do that second leg, and then I'm going to do the whole thing again for the second leg set. But you don't need to watch me do all that. I'm sure you get the idea. So let me finish this at my drill press, and I'll be right back. So I've got my holes drilled, and now all I need to do is bolt the legs in their places. To do that, I'm going to need my 9/16 inch wrench. I'm going to need my power driver with the 9/16 inch socket installed, and I'm going to need some of my hardware. Now the hardware, the nuts and bolts and screws and odds and ends have been packed in multiple pouches, and they've been packed in the order in which they'll be required. So I've cut open the pouch at one end, and I've taken out the bolts that I need to hold this leg in place. Now we're only going to be using the top and bottom holes at this point. So I put a washer on the bolt and put it through that hole. Same thing at the top. And now I'm going to put a washer on the end, and then install my Nylox nut. Now this top bolt is only there temporarily to hold things together for the rest of the assembly. Eventually, when we do the overall assembly of the bench base, this will be replaced by a threaded rod which will run all the way through both leg sets and the rail that goes between them. Same thing with the second hole. The bottom bolt will remain in place for the life of your bench. So let me do the same thing for the second leg, and then the same thing for the second tray, and we'll have two of these, and we'll be ready to move on to step 2, which is going to be a similar assembly of the toothed tray.